There is a quiet force that works in the background of the human mind. It doesn't shout, but it corrodes self-esteem, twists how we see ourselves, and quietly sets the boundaries of what we dare to feel, say, or even dream. This force doesn't break bones or leave bruises. It wounds with something far sharper, psychological subtlety. Its name is shame. Shame is not just an emotion, it's a parasite. It feeds on secrecy, silence, and self-blame. While guilt tells us, I did something wrong, shame whispers, I am something wrong. And that tiny shift is what makes it devastating. From childhood, shame plants itself in the smallest cracks: an adult's disapproving look, a cruel comparison with a sibling, a casual critique of the body or personality. A child, without the tools to fight back, absorbs the message, there's something wrong with me. That's where the fracture begins. To be accepted, we hide parts of ourselves. To be loved, we trade authenticity for approval. Piece by piece, we lose touch with who we really are. And unless we see it for what it is, shame becomes the invisible script that shapes our lives. Cologne is like an invisible judge, always watching, always suspicious. It questions every thought, every impulse, every part of us that feels real and alive. And that's why so many adults grow up trapped inside themselves, policing their own desires, silencing their emotions, avoiding vulnerability at all costs. They've been conditioned to believe that showing who they truly are would strip them of love, respect, or belonging. In this way, shame becomes more than an emotion. It becomes a system of control, a psychological prison. People learn to adapt, to mold themselves, to hide, not out of choice, but out of fear. And here's the most dangerous part. The longer shame goes unchallenged, the more it disguises itself as identity. People stop noticing they feel ashamed and start believing they are defective, unworthy, or broken. This video exists to break that illusion, to expose the hidden gears of shame and remind you it is not the truth of who you are. It's a learned response, a survival system born from fear of judgment. And once you understand how shame takes root, how it operates, and most importantly, how to dismantle it, you unlock one of the most liberating steps in life, reclaiming your authenticity. But before we dive deeper, let's clear the confusion. Shame is not the same as guilt. Though they're often tangled together, guilt says I did something wrong, shame says I am something wrong. That distinction changes everything.
Guilt and shame both live in the human psyche, but they shape us in very different ways. Guilt, when it's connected to moral awareness, can actually be healthy. It's a signal, an inner compass pointing out when our actions have hurt someone else or betrayed our own values. And when we truly feel it, guilt can lead to repair, growth, and transformation. Think of it as an emotional traffic light. It flashes red, telling us something needs to change, but it doesn't touch the core of who we are. The message of guilt is simple. You did something wrong, now make it right. Shame, however, crosses that boundary. It doesn't just criticize behavior, it attacks identity. It doesn't say you did something bad, it whispers you are bad. And that subtle shift is what makes shame so destructive. While guilt preserves dignity and invites us to grow, shame erodes self-worth, poisons self-perception, and convinces us that our very existence is flawed. Shame has a way of twisting every mistake, every rejection, every imperfection into something far heavier, proof of our inadequacy. A person living under the weight of shame doesn't think, I made a mistake. They think, I am a mistake. And when that belief takes root, it becomes the seed of a toxic identity. From it grow patterns like extreme perfectionism, paralyzing procrastination, the constant need to please, and even self-destructive behaviors, all desperate attempts to cover up what the person secretly fears is a fatal flaw within themselves. Shame is quiet, but it never rests. Unlike guilt, which we can reflect on and resolve, shame sinks deeper. It doesn't just live in thought, it embeds itself in the body, in memory, in the unconscious. You can see it in lowered eyes, in a stiffened posture, in the struggle to be seen, accepted, or loved as you are. And the most dangerous thing about shame is its camouflage. Many don't even realize they're carrying it because it has already blended into their sense of self. So where does shame begin? How does something so corrosive weave itself so early and so deeply into the human mind? That's what we'll uncover in the next section, how from childhood we are subtly conditioned to believe that simply being ourselves is somehow wrong. If this message is connecting with you, if it feels like pieces are falling into place, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep this conversation alive. Shame is not something we are born with. It is not natural. It is built, conditioned, and passed down. No child enters the world believing they are broken. The natural state of a human being is authenticity, expressing emotions, impulses, and desires openly, without fear, without censorship. But this pure state begins to erode early, and often the erosion comes from the very people meant to protect and nurture it: parents, caregivers, teachers, and society itself. It doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with subtle moments. A disapproving look when a child cries, a comparison with a sibling, an impatient sigh at a question, a harsh punishment for simple curiosity. In these small but powerful moments, the child absorbs a dangerous message. If I am myself, I will be punished. If I express what I feel, I will be rejected. If I show who I am, I will not be loved. This silent conditioning is deeply traumatic, even without shouting or visible aggression. Out of a basic need for belonging, the child adapts. They learn to suppress emotions labeled as ugly, anger, sadness, frustration. They learn that vulnerability is weakness, that spontaneity is unacceptable. And so begins the first psychic fracture. The true self is pushed into hiding, and in its place, a mask is born. This mask is the false self, an identity shaped not by authenticity, but by compliance. Not by who the child is, but by who they believe they must be to earn love, approval, and safety. As John Bradshaw describes in Healing the Shame That Binds You, this false self is a form of psychic survival. The child distances themselves from their essence to avoid rejection. But this survival strategy comes at a devastating cost: the loss of authenticity, the loss of self. If this resonates, if you felt that mask in your own life, hit like and subscribe, because uncovering shame's roots is the first step to breaking free from it. Shame doesn't just create pain, it creates an emptiness, an inner void, a constant sense of not being enough, and with it, an endless hunger for external validation. Over time, this dynamic becomes automatic. The child who once silenced themselves to survive grows into an adult who censors their own thoughts and emotions before they even surface. They forget who they were before they adapted, before they put on the mask. And perhaps the most tragic part, the same harshness they once received, they begin to project onto others. Internalized shame doesn't just trap us, it replicates itself. It shapes our relationships, our parenting, our careers. It becomes a cycle, endlessly passed on, unless we choose to break it. To break it, we must first see how shame evolves into something far more insidious: a system of internal surveillance. Once rooted, shame stops being just a reaction to criticism or rejection. It transforms into a constant, invisible judge that monitors every thought, every gesture, every choice. And here is the cruelest twist. This judge is not outside of us. It lives within us. It is the voice that whispers, "Don't speak too much. Don't show that side of yourself. That's ridiculous. No one will take you seriously." It is the discomfort you feel when you express yourself authentically, only to be crushed by a wave of embarrassment, as if you had committed a crime by being real. It is the quiet censor inside your head, forcing you to seek approval, fueling the irrational fear of rejection. This internal judge, forged in childhood and strengthened over the years, becomes a permanent overseer of the psyche, a relentless authority that punishes us simply for existing as we are. If this feels familiar, if you've recognized that judge inside yourself, remember, you are not alone. And if this perspective opens something for you, please like this video and subscribe. Every new voice in this conversation helps weaken the power of shame. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the second half, because that's where real transformation begins.